I just felt very quickly the power that self-care can have, even at a young age. So I went through my journey through college, university, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life, coming back home after university, and then spent a year traveling throughout Southeast Asia, which also I think opened my eyes a lot to the really deep sides of wellness, the more meaningful parts through spirituality and community, etc.
Welcome to this episode of our 292 Wellness Podcast. We're delighted to have Jessica Shea from Hilton. She's Vice President for Wellness, Retail and Leisure Operations at Hilton. I'm just going to read your bio here, Jessica. Jessica Shea is a globally recognized thought leader in the wellness and hospitality industry, with over 20 years experience leading hotel and spa teams, with a passion for creating meaningful guest experiences that drive business performance. Sounds like a nice place to be.
It's the best job in the world.
Perfect. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we discussed on our pre-call yesterday, we've spoken to a lot of sort of more independent individuals that are either working for smaller companies. This is the first time us speaking to somebody who works for a huge global brand. And so we're really intrigued today to understand what's that like, how they're sort of starting to incorporate more and more wellness as this is becoming a bigger trend, and how quickly those things can be implemented given the size of the company. And I'm sure the red tape and like we said yesterday, turning around that big ship can be difficult. So as a kickoff though, why don't you give us a bit of your background, how you arrived at your current position and your current 8 years at Hilton?
Sure, happy to. So it's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I got into the industry when I was around 12 or 13 because my stepfather was a hairstylist. So I started working in a hair salon very, very young, probably illegally, but that's probably not for this podcast. I just felt very quickly the power that self-care can have, even at a young age. So I went through my journey through college, university, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life, coming back home after university, and then spent a year traveling throughout Southeast Asia, which also I think opened my eyes a lot to the really deep sides of wellness, the more meaningful parts through spirituality and community, etc. So those things combined, I came back, and my stepfather happened to be transitioning his salon into a day spa. He had bought and renovated actually an old library in Salem, Massachusetts, which may be interesting to you as architects and designers. It was an incredible project of a historic building, and I spent the next 5 years there. Didn't really think I'd end up there that long, but I did, and ended up running this really great day spa. And from there, I realized that I loved travel and I loved wellness and I loved spas. And I thought maybe there's like hotel jobs that I could get doing this, and started looking, and spent the next 12 years working for Hyatt, both as an on-property spa director in several locations through the U.S. before I went back to Asia. Was a regional spa director there in Thailand, and I took over also hotel operations at a big hotel. So that was amazing. And I, after having my daughter there, I was ready to get back to the States, and was looking for opportunities. And Hilton had a role open as the global director of spas, essentially looking at the spa strategy across the globe. And this was 8 years ago, so it was pre-COVID, obviously, and sort of a younger time of big companies like Hilton having corporate positions looking at that. So it was really exciting. So I spent 1.5 years in that role, which was fantastic. We did some big things. And then an opportunity for me to look after spa and wellness in the Americas came up. And so I was really excited to do that and get into the operations. I really missed sort of hotel operations, being in more of a strategy role. So it was the perfect mix of kind of strategy, starting a discipline from the ground up in the Americas, bringing all of our spas together, and looking at it a bit more holistically. So that's been really exciting. And that's the position I've been in essentially for the last several years, except 2 years ago, it expanded to not only look over spas and wellness, but look after our retail and leisure operations in our managed hotels. And that's where I am today.
Very cool. I just wanted to go back because with this huge progression in wellness right now, I'm interested to understand what a day spa looked like in Salem, Massachusetts, however many years ago that was.
I don't want to date myself and say it was that long ago, but it was quite a long time ago. It's interesting. I think at that time, probably most day spas were largely centered around salon services. I think salons just expanded. And this was, pre-Medi Spa days. So it really was highly salon centered. And then some massage rooms, aesthetic rooms, manicure, pedicure sort of bolted onto that. And that leading with the hair business and that local clientele. I mean, those were your most dedicated people. Every 4 weeks when a woman started to see, it was just mostly women back then, started to see, the gray starting to show in the middle of their forehead, they were in there like clockwork. And that was an easy way to add on all these other services to that business.
Fascinating. And then North America now is becoming one of the leaders markets in wellness, but I don't know that it was traditionally. So we're hearing through the Global Wellness Summit how they look at all the different geographical locations that, this is where a lot of money's being spent.
Yeah, and I think that the advantage I had in living in Asia for so long is in some ways it's not as evolved as a market, and in some ways it's leagues beyond in terms of the spas that are built in hotels in specifically in Southeast Asia or just Asia in general were just incredible. So that sort of, broke open my understanding of what that could look like in a different market than the US. And how I feel like now we've sort of brought all of those worlds together in North America.
Super cool. So as we talk about your role at Hilton, why do you think? Actually, I'm going to go back one. I read an article this morning that was talking about how I think Hilton's the number one hospitality company to work for rated, and also I think number 2 on the list just sort of globally as a company. Mm-hmm. That for me speaks to wellness, just from fulfillment, being looked after. What do you think that core principle is at Hilton, and what gets them to that top of the list?
I mean, at the end of the day, hospitality is all about people. And I think that our CEO and our leadership has created an incredible culture at Hilton. I mean, I absolutely love it. I've felt completely supported in all of my personal and professional ambitions since I've started with the company. I think there's a lot of awareness of what consumers are looking for. And I think that sort of gets us where we are today with wellness. There's trust, I think, in the people that work for the company to make good decisions, and for everybody to stay informed and sort of evolve and move with what people are asking for, which, as you pointed out early on, can be very difficult in a massive company like Hilton. I've been actually quite surprised with the agility, but I think there's a true belief in serving travelers as well as serving the communities that we operate in. And I've seen and felt that firsthand. And I think that is a testament to why we are today, where I would say, I'm a little bit biased, sort of leading the industry with how we're thinking about wellness.
Yeah, like Ben was saying, wellness is such a big topic now. It's a movement, a trend. And you're saying, you were talking about consumer demand. Do you really see that as consumers demanding, hotels reacting to that, like extending the wellness lifestyle during travel? And if so, is that something that's pandemic driven, or when did you see those demands rising?
I mean, 100%. I'd say as sort of caring and supportive as Hilton is, we're also interested in business and ultimately making money, right? So we wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't consumer demand for it. And I think a lot of the decisions that the company makes are very much based on consumer analytics and what consumers are wanting. And I think I mentioned to this yesterday. I mean, I've never seen a point in all my years in hospitality where the consumer and the businesses are coming together on wellness in such a big way and saying, it feels like now is the moment. And unfortunately, it is an impact of COVID. I think people just got so much more focused. A couple things. They're so much more focused on their health and well-being coming out of a pandemic. I think more than ever, people understand that there are very much preventative measures and lifestyle choices you can take to help impact your health, that you can be, preventative about a lot of the things that we're fighting against. And also, people developed very different priorities, some self-care routines, exercise habits. Think about how much exercise came into the home through COVID. So all of these things come together that when people went back out in the world, they're not expecting any less. They need all of those things to still happen while traveling. So, a couple examples, we do a lot of consumer insight research, and our most recent showed that 90% of travelers agree that wellness is a priority while traveling. And this it gets actually even more of a need as you get younger in age, whereby Gen Z and millennials prioritize travel with a focus on wellness 60% of the time. And I think the interesting thing about that is, where we, Hilton, and other big chains like us play in this space may be different than a destination spot. We're not trying to be Canyon Ranch or, Six Senses, which are amazing places doing incredible things. I'd say we serve more of that sort of, I just want some wellness while I'm doing the other things I'm there for kind of person, whether it be a business meeting, a wedding, a vacation. I need to maintain my healthier habits while I'm on the road. And so I think that's at the forefront of what we're looking at Hilton. How can we deliver or support wellness across the chain scale and across the globe in a meaningful way? And that's what we're really looking at and up against tackling.
I think it's great to see. I've got 300 questions that came out of that. I think the first one is, I think that's always been something we've been considering, is like how can you deliver wellness on that scale and those different scale of hotels or places people are staying. But going back, I think how much of it is driven by, you're trying to help a consumer who's already wellness focused maintain their wellness modalities while they're on the road, versus giving an opportunity to educate or introduce wellness to people that aren't savvy in that way?
I think a little bit of all of it. I mean, I think when we look at wellness across the chain scale, it's going to come to life in very different ways in very different markets. But for example, we know that a good night's sleep is really the cornerstone to wellness. And it's also the core business of a hospitality company. So the first place we've decided to start is sleep, because we know that's something we can really impact in every hotel. And that could look like making sure it's cool, dark, quiet in a Hampton Inn, all the way to, bamboo bedding and air purifiers in a luxury property with spas and all the bells and whistles. I mean, it's going to express itself in very different ways. But if you're thinking about it from the beginning, it's not that difficult to execute, quite honestly, in small, meaningful ways. Another example is we have a fitness center in pretty much every hotel across the globe, right? So making sure that that's not only there, but that we're being thoughtful and competitive and innovative about what we bring into those hotels. So I think you can serve the basics. I think I mentioned to you yesterday, the platform that we're looking at this through, the lens we're looking at this through, is around 4 pillars. The first one being sleep, again, movement, nourishment, because food and beverage options are really important, and that's a big one to tackle, but it's certainly something we know is important and are looking at. And then spa and mindfulness. At its core, we've always had spa and fitness center at Hilton for many, many years, and we're one of the largest operators of spas globally. We have 400 plus spas around the world. So that will be more of that piece you asked me about. The second part of the question is exposing people to new things and new places. We know more and more that people want to feel the destination they're traveling to. They want to understand the local culture. They don't want to be in a cookie cutter box that they don't feel that sense of where they're at. So a spa is a great place to expose people to, for example, the healing modalities of a local culture that maybe they've never even thought about before, which also just ties them closer to the culture in general. So I think we have an obligation to support people's core needs around wellness and lifestyle choices, but then expose them at lots of different opportunities and intersection points to what's new and what they might be able to bring home for themselves.
I mean, that's really exciting for me to hear. Like you were saying, that it's not difficult and it doesn't have to be a luxury property to touch on it and do it well and touch on the core pillars, because that's such an important foundation. And like you're saying as well, to meeting people a little bit where they're at, and then you can add on, because there's so much transformational travel going on with a lot of spiritual practices, but not everyone is necessarily open to that. So I'm kind of curious, when you say about alternative medicine or medicine that's more distinct for that locality, what kind of experience is there? A property that comes to mind that does that really well, that Hilton has, that brings those ancient wisdom into the healing?
Yeah, we just actually this year we relaunched Grand Wailea, the spa Grand Wailea, which has been a spa icon for 25 plus years, one of the original spas. But it was, in dire need of a refresh. And so about 4 or 5 years ago now, we embarked on a massive renovation of the spa. And with that, a reimagining of what the experience was going to be like. And that just opened beginning of this year as Kilolani Spa. And it was done completely in tandem and in support with the culture advisor on property, an external cultural consultant. The whole concept was developed to be around the Hawaiian moon calendar and the way that Hawaiians used to, and some do still, live based on those cycles. And so it's incredibly authentic from, design to experience that, people go to Hawaii. It's wonderful. There's indoor, outdoor spaces and there's lava rock showers, but there's also this spiritual component to it that people probably may not have been exposed to otherwise. And it's educational and they're learning about it and they're feeling it. That's the wonderful thing about a spa. It's touch, it's it can go really deep and be very impactful when you learn about those things or feel those things in a spa setting. So that one we're super proud of.
And then, so now that, wellness is obviously, it can be monetized and it's becoming consumer driven. When you're looking at new properties or repurposing existing or rebranding, is wellness or the spa the centerpiece, whereas it used to just be an amenity that ticked a box? Are you now seeing that now we need to make sure that this is really the thread that carries out through a property?
Yeah. And of course not in every property, but I'm just so grateful. I feel like it's been my life's work to prove that spa is not just an amenity, not only from an experience perspective, but from a financial one. And we're very proud of driving performance for our owners in our spas. But yeah, I like to say that I think the spa is like the heartbeat of the hotel. It's where you can go to feel like the soul of what the hotel's positioning is, what the hotel is, who the hotel is trying to be and what they're trying to express and deliver. Like it's palpable in the spa. And so more and more, we are seeing it as a focus. And not only for guests, but extending some of the experiences and services to the team members throughout the hotel. For example, we were at a conference earlier this year for Hilton where we wanted to, it was Housekeeping Appreciation Week. And so we engaged the lead therapist of the spa at the Signia in Atlanta, and he led some amazing like Tai Chi and movement sessions for the housekeepers on property so they could experience some of that and like bring that ethos throughout the property. So I think more and more owners are understanding its importance from being a differentiator for a hotel in the market when both leisure travelers and groups are looking at where they want to stay, as well as just bringing the entire hotel experience to life. The other thing I think the spa does is our guest satisfaction metrics, the way we measure sort of a stay score and how satisfied people are, it's broken down by different areas of the hotel. Spa always carries the highest level of satisfaction of any other department. And I really believe that's because it's personal. It's very impactful. It touches people's hearts and souls. And, it's so memorable that when it's done well and executed properly, that guest journey is something that they don't forget. And they really it impacts their overall stay when the spa experience goes well. So I think from an experience perspective, people are understanding how important that is too.
Very cool. I do want to leap back to one of your answers previously about just getting those 4 pillars right, and it doesn't really matter the level of the hotel. Is that now finding its way then into redefining some of the brand standards to make sure that a Hampton Inn can make sure somebody has a good night's sleep by upgrading, whether it's the blackout drapery or making sure that...
it certainly will. It's already influencing them. We've really made more robust standards already around our core, which was spa and fitness. And I think as it expands into guest room and food and beverage, more and more of that will come to light, both from a design perspective and a kind of operating standard perspective.
And while we're on the note on sleep, we hear a lot about sleep retreats being quite popular for travelers, for people really wanting to understand their sleep, how they can sleep better, and actually going on vacation to sleep and understand that and come back rested. And I think you mentioned that there's a program or collaborations that Hilton has been doing around sleep.
Yeah, when we started on this journey, we're fully transparent and recognize though we deliver sleep, we may not be the leading experts on how to best deliver a supportive night's sleep because there are plenty of scientists and experts out there studying it. So we partnered with Dr. Rebecca Robbins, who's a Harvard PhD and sleep scientist, just as sort of our go-to advisor as we're making these decisions around standards or the built environment or bedding, on which direction. She's helping us point us in the right direction on what's really going to be meaningful. And one of the first things that we did with her was kick off some sleep retreats. So she has led a sleep retreat. She led a sleep retreat this past year. And it's really cool because, a hotel is like literally the perfect place to deliver a retreat, first of all, and then also a sleep retreat. So we did it actually at Grand Wailea in new wellness rooms, which we launched there in kind of tandem with the spa. And it was about 5 days of educational sessions with her, one-on-one sessions and consultations with her, but also all of the supportive things that we could do to help promote sleep over that time period. Things like yoga and nidra, and food that support your circadian rhythms at different parts of the day. So it's educational, but also very experiential. So it was incredibly successful, and we're looking at doing a few more next year. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that sounds great. We both you go.
I heard you mention wellness rooms in that sentence. Yeah. We'd love to hear more about those.
Sure. So we're working on them in a few properties right now. So we have everything. We have some rooms in our hotels, which I would just call more of like a Peloton room. So we have Pelotons in quite a few of our guest rooms through our partnership with Peloton. We have a Peloton in every hotel in the US, which is super exciting. And so that was sort of where it started, the genesis. But then we've really expanded to other wellness rooms that include things like recovery tools, massage tools, compression boots, but it's also, top of bed, which Dr. Robbins sort of advised on how to make that most supportive for sleep, air purifiers, blackout shades, white noise, shower purifiers, things like that have been put in the rooms to just support more wellness during the stay. And I think that will evolve as we have more, new build opportunities to, build wellness rooms. We have 4 actually at Conrad, the new Conrad in Orlando that just opened earlier this year, which will contain a lot of opportunities for movement, like a bike and, movement kits, as well as they're right on our spa garden. So there's access to these beautiful contrast bathing facilities.
Very cool. So one of the main topics in the wellness world is, contrast therapies, hot and cold. Is that something now that's becoming extensive in your wellness and spa offerings?
Yes, for sure. I'd say I don't think we're looking at a project that doesn't have it. Obviously, it's in different scale and scope based on location and footprint, and how much space we can push for. But especially in resorts where we have more space, especially indoor outdoor space, the design is really thoughtful, really beautiful. I'm really excited about that part of the work. You know this, but other parts of the world have been embracing bathing culture for a long time, and I feel like in North America we're finally getting a little less modest and finally okay with sort of co-ed bathing circuits, being all risque. But it's super exciting because it's so impactful. And look, I think treatments are absolutely amazing and integral to the experience, but sometimes people just don't have time or just can't do that, or it may not be their thing. But if you can get them into a hot and cold bathing circuit, it's so good for you, and it's so rejuvenating, and the health benefits, the science around it is really incredible. So if we can offer that to a guest who just has time to go to the fitness center and then spend 20 minutes in some sort of contrast bathing circuit, that's a really great way to deliver wellness. So very excited about that.
Yeah, that when you're talking about sort of more smaller pockets of time around wellness, that makes me think more about sort of the business traveler. And when we talk about leisure, it's much easier to think about wellness. And when we talk about business travel, traveling to conferences, we do that a lot. And we always talk about never having found a full way to really stay on track with movement, nutrition, sleep. It's really hard as a business traveler. And I think you were saying that there's a couple of initiatives that you're looking at as well to really support people, especially with conferences, because it's really hard on your system.
It's so hard on your system. And I think I said this yesterday, but I just find it fascinating that we expect people to show up and be high performers, be fully attentive, be their best self while they're at this conference, take in all this information, remember it all, and then go back and execute it. And yet I feel that historically we have set up conferences to do like none of that. Like nobody is at their best. So we're trying to go at it with that mindset and look again at those pillars that I mentioned before: sleep, nourishment, movement, spa, and mindfulness, which perfectly play into a meeting setting. It just has to be the meeting planners need to want it, and the facility needs to be able to support it. So sleep, for example, we've been talking to our conference planning team about making sure the agenda allows time for exercise, that it allows time for people to spend like half an hour, whatever it is they need to do their morning routine. For some people, that's meditation, it's a walk, it's connecting back with their families or replying to emails so they're not distracted by them all day, but some time built in to just make it a more healthful day in terms of the agenda. And thinking about, it might not be the best for performance and attentiveness to be out networking at the bar till midnight and then requiring people to come to a breakfast meeting at 7 a.m. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I don't think people can maintain that for the several days in a row that we often ask them to. So that's one thing, is really understanding that people need downtime and time to rest. And that looks like sleep, but I think it also looks like mindfulness breaks or little breaks throughout the day. We have some great programs where we've worked with partners to bring in pop-up recovery areas outside a meeting room. So loungers with compression boots, massage tools, things like that right outside the meeting room, alongside some much more nourishing food and beverage options. It's great to be bringing, adaptogens and juices and brain food into a meeting space to help people, beyond just caffeine, which is also pretty necessary, to help them, their mind be clear and to perform at their best. Movement, looking at meeting spaces where people can stand or walk around or have a break to go for a walk in the middle of the day. Or even if it's a smaller meeting, like have a meeting while you're walking, especially if the environment allows for it in a place where you can go for a hike or something like that. So it's part of the, obviously a lot of the responsibility of the agenda and the meeting planning, but we're trying to feed ideas to folks to say, hey, this is important to people and we can help you get creative on how you can execute it. Look at even hotels that don't have a spa. it's not difficult to partner with local yoga instructors to come in and do a morning stretch, or sound healers to do 20 minutes in the middle of the day to just get people to reset. So looking at it through that lens, I think is a huge opportunity and would highly benefit the attendees and the companies that send them to these conferences.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear what you're saying. Like, bring really that mindfulness to the day and not just kind of shut that off. And like you're saying, we need to still be performing and learning and thinking about all those things. And we can't do that under those circumstances. So I'm looking forward to the next conference. That's the way you were describing it.
Yeah, it's funny for me. It was always used to be, it always was an excuse for me when I'm on the road. It's like, okay, it's, you're not going to work out. You can eat what you like, you can drink, you can stay up late. But I've sort of gone the opposite now. I'm still not brilliant on the road, but stopped drinking a year or so ago, which just helps everything because there's just more awareness and discipline about, oh yeah, I should go to bed now at 10 o'clock. Whereas when you're a few drinks in, you don't think like that. You just, so yeah, there's a lot to be said. I think there's a lot to be said for the actual design of the spaces too, because we totally understand from a business point of view, you've got to cater to a lot of different people and have that flexibility. So, creating these beautiful, say it's a sort of large conference-centered, nature-centered room doesn't necessarily work for a wedding or whatever it might be. So, but I think there is a hybrid there where just some natural daylight, even if it's kind of diffused or secondary, or a view out to this beautiful landscape that we're typically in these hotels is a big part of it too.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that's, on the minds of a lot of designers. I'm sure you see it, and with our internal teams as well. I mean, yeah, some daylight in a meeting room sounds like a great idea, to keep people alert and awake. It's just, obviously there's all this competition for space, because I always want, I want the spa around the daylight too. So, but I think there's lots of opportunities and a change in mindset. I mean, people understand this a lot more, that, having plants and light and nature as nearby as possible is really beneficial. So I think the tide is turning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do too. Just going back to a sort of a broad, big brand wellness sort of concept moving forward, with, not naming names, how do you think Hilton are differentiating themselves from the other big brands that you're in the same space with?
I think we are taking a very comprehensive view, which isn't always easy in big companies, right? Like, you can be very siloed in terms of food and beverage or wellness or whatever the accounting, whatever the discipline is. But I do feel within Hilton, and I can't really speak for the competitors, but I do think we're taking a wide view, and there's stakeholder buy-in across the organization. We have a very matrix organization, and you need to have a lot of alignment when you look at something like wellness and making these big shifts. And I really feel that we have it within Hilton. And so that to me is super exciting, because I have seen or been in other environments where that might not necessarily be true. And I don't think that we are today positioning it on one of our brands or just luxury. So that is also different and exciting.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And then the way you're describing how Hilton is putting wellness across like the different brands, the different core pillars, when I hear you talk about it, I can definitely hear that you are a wellness person. You have a wellness lifestyle, obviously your experience. So I think someone in that role with that personal wellness is really driving and helping it in the right direction. And on that note, what's your sort of personal wellness routine journey? Because I feel like that's influencing so much in what you're doing for Hilton and for your work. So I'd be really curious what your kind of background is on that.
Well, thanks. I think I look at it kind of, I don't know, there's sort of like the wellness goodies, like I love spa. Of course I love spa. I mean, I would spend every day in a spa if I could. I was just in Miami this weekend with my best girlfriends from university, and we went to 2 spas. It was just like, it was so good. But I also was lucky enough for example, I went to Bhutan on a personal trip last month, and that was a great reminder to me about how sort of the basics are also so important to one's wellness. Access to nature, spirituality, whatever form that is for you, has a huge impact on people's well-being. Living simply and gratefully with what you have. That culture is very kind of detached from the craziness of the world that we live in. And you can feel it when you're there, and you just feel really good. So I really think it's about, day-to-day choices that allow you to be at your best. For me, that also includes, yoga and meditation and exercise and, I don't know, collagen powder, whatever it is that you need to do on a daily basis to be in your best mind. Sleep, all of that is really important. And then you can sprinkle in all the flashy stuff. But I think it's really a daily choice. And when we talk about travel and Hilton, I mean, that's sort of what I think where we can have the most impact is supporting people's daily choices when they're on the road, as much as they've cultivated them at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's spot on. We share exactly the same viewpoint and values, that you've got to get the basics right. And then, like you said, you can sprinkle in the extra nice bits on top. Unfortunately, I think people get wowed by clever marketing and they go for the shiny things first and forget all the fundamentals. And when we were at the Global Wellness Summit earlier this month, the incredible stat was, we're spending more money than ever on wellness, yet people aren't getting weller, which is really sad to hear, because I can only imagine that it comes down to a lot of it clever marketing, that people aren't focusing on the right things, and they're going for the shiny quick fix object, which doesn't really work in the long term.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, but I think probably one of the biggest drivers of this, and I'm sure you heard this at the conference, is just the individual nature that phones and our digital world has created in this sort of, especially in young people, what that's doing to people's mental health, with a lack of community and a lack of connection. So I think to your point, at its core, that's something we really need to address, is that sense of belonging and community and connection.
Yeah. And like you were saying as well, it's the connection to nature. I think we live in such a dual reality right now that I feel that the disconnection to nature is causing a lot. And like you were describing with that trip to Bhutan, is just really understanding sometimes that's all it takes, is just to go out in nature and be with nature, because it's just something that we're meant to be and do. And that gets us back to the more simple things and being just grateful for our life. And those simple things can just really switch a lot of negative thoughts and things we're in and the stress we're in. So I think it's easy, but it's also not easy because we're so distracted by a lot of things to go back to that simple stuff. And you were talking about cultivating. I think that's really important too, because what we're doing every day is really what matters, what gets us to that better place. But sometimes it's discipline to stick with even small things, to stick with that. But cultivating is a really important point, I think, to ultimately get to more sort of happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah, and I think there's a recognition that you can start fresh every day. Just because you had an off day yesterday, or you did have too many drinks at the bar, or whatever it was, today's a new day. So I feel like sometimes people put these long-term, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to do this detox, and then that's going to be it for the next 20 years. I fixed it. It's just not how it works. You need to just every day wake up and do it again.
Yeah, it really is that simple, yet we find it so difficult. I don't know what it is, but as a people, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah. So as we're looking forward now, what are you seeing as sort of wellness trends that you're starting to sort of keep your eye on, or what's exciting for you going forward?
I think probably a lot of the things kind of we touched on. I mean, I'm sort of a realist when it comes to trends. I think trends are really great and they can be very inspirational when all these sort of wellness trends come out. But I'm also very practical, and I want us to be, us as speaking for Hilton, to be honest about what's impactful and what we can deliver. And so just, the trends in design, I think, are really exciting. The trends in meetings. I think one of the trends that we see in our spas or with consumers, and I think I touched on this yesterday, is, we serve guests of the whole spectrum of spa goer, right? Somebody who goes all the time and is a big sort of retreat person to, somebody maybe coming for a corporate group that's never been to a spa. And there's a lot in that category. Maybe not, never to once or twice, or I'm still always interested by the people I talk to who still feel quite intimidated by a spa. I mentioned the girlfriends that I went with this past weekend, and we walked into the spa and they were like, do I put on the robe? How do I, I'm like, you ladies, I know you've been to a spa before, but I think people just sometimes get in this mentality of like, it's not a natural place to be in, and they feel a little uncomfortable. So what I get excited about in terms of trends is more and more people getting comfortable in that environment, more and more people being open to dipping their toe into new modalities, or what I sometimes call the more woo-woo parts of wellness, where now when we have a traditional massage, for example, maybe we will start it with breath work, or bring in some energetic healing through crystals, for example, like these kind of other modalities that people may not have entered people's mind, and they're like, whoa, that was powerful, that was meaningful. I'm going to go try to find that when I go back home. So I see a lot more openness as a trend in people, which is, I think, one to really harness on and capture and roll with for all the reasons we just discussed. And with that, as I touched on before, people being more and more interested in experiencing that in connection with the culture and the tradition, the healing traditions of the location that they're in. So I feel like we have a huge opportunity to tap into that more than ever. For Hilton, our 2025 trends report came out as the year of the travel maximizer, was kind of the title, talking about how people are really looking to get the most out of their travel, whether it's the vacation or the work trip, and doing everything from, adventure to restorative experiences. Like, it's all about experience. So that's super exciting because that's what we do, and we can help deliver and facilitate. And I think that's really true. I think gone are the days of most vacations centering around being overly indulgent, as you were mentioning before. And I'm responsible for cabanas in our hotel. So I very much want people to still chill by the pool and be in a cabana. But I also want people to get out and experience the place that they're in and maximize that time. So they go back feeling better, learning a bit, and hopefully extending some of that restorative feeling when they get back home. So I'm kind of a more simple trends kind of person.
I think it's right, though.
Like that, yeah.
Because anything too, like we said, new and shiny tends to fade away, doesn't it? But it's the things that are going to stay.
Yeah.
Talking briefly on the business model, we had Amy McDonald on our podcast a few weeks ago, and she's very much seeing that trend towards the individual treatment room not going away, but being less important to more social wellness and monetizing modalities that don't need a practitioner present, or you can have 5 to 10 guests for one practitioner, which obviously has a huge impact on the ability to make more money. Is that something you're seeing in your spas too? Yeah,
100%. I mean, it kind of goes back to the trends around, well, I guess, contrast bathing and hydrotherapy becoming more of a thing in North America. It kind of connects to the business model that we're going to have to start facilitating more, purely because of the shortage of technicians and therapists, aside from all else. So I think it's super important. The challenge can be, as those spaces are, as a bit more expensive to build. And when we're renovating, they're a bit more expensive to sell to owners as a good idea, instead of, all these treatment rooms. But at the end of the day, the bottom line, obviously, and the operating performance is stronger in those spaces. So I love Amy, and I totally agree with her. And I think there will always be a place for touch modalities, and they're so important to the experience. But we do need to think more about the spaces that we build and how they can be more conducive to communal hydrotherapy.
Very cool. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I think it's really encouraging for us to hear that such a big brand is coming on board and taking it so responsibly and with authenticity. And it sounds like
it's very exciting.
You at the helm, it's in a good place.
Well, thank you. We have a great team across our organization when it comes to wellness. We're very lucky in that way. A lot of really passionate, thought leaders in the space. So, one of the other reasons I love Hilton is they've done a great job employing the right people. So hopefully we can continue the charge and push it forward, because it's such an exciting time for wellness and hospitality for sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
It's been
It was
a pleasure.
lovely to meet you both.